It's with deep sadness that I inform you of a heartbreaking tragedy that took place last night. 5 University of Georgia students were in a terrible car accident outside of Athens. 4 of our students lost their lives, and 1 is in critical condition at Athens Regional Medical Center. These outstanding students have been actively involved in our campus community. We extend our deepest condolences to the families and friends of our students, and we ask you to keep these students and their family and friends in your thoughts and in your prayers. The loss of any student is very difficult. A tragedy of this magnitude is truly devastating. The university will come together later today for a gathering of reflection for the lives of these students at the Tate Center Plaza at 5 p.m. I urge all members of the university community to support each other during this difficult time. Counseling services will be available for students as needed at University Health Services. During this time of tremendous sadness, let us draw together as a UGA family and care for each other. We can take any questions that you might have. There are members of our senior leadership team to assist me in responding to any questions.
What are you able to tell us about the students and what they were studying or what they were involved in here on campus?
I'll be glad to defer to the Vice President for Student Affairs, Mr. Victor Wilson. We know that these were students involved in our Greek community, involved in some of our religious organizations on campus. I'm, at this point, trying to respect the privacy of the families and showing them as much respect as we can at this point. I have had the chance to communicate personally with all but 1, and we are still attempting to reach that family this morning. But I want to be particularly sensitive to identifying the particular organizations they're involved in at this point. I'd rather that come from the families. I do know more about that issue, but I want to be particularly careful about what I say at this stage. Yes, sir.
We know 3 students died at the accident scene and 1 later died at Athens Regional. Do we know which ones died at Athens Regional?
I'm going to let our police chief respond as he thinks that's appropriate to that question. I don't know what has been publicly announced at this point in that regard. So, Chief, do you want to respond?
I think we ought to leave that to the Georgia State Patrol. They're concluding their investigation, and they'll have those types of details later. I didn't really try to inquire about the order that people were deceased that night, but Georgia State Patrol will have all that out. They're sharing that information just as soon as they conclude their investigation.
Yes, sir.
Who originally contacted the families to notify them? Was it UGA police or
Chief?
Actually, there was a team effort last night between the Oconee County Sheriff's Office, the Georgia State Patrol, and the University of Georgia Police based on available resources and the fact that we have a lot of the information they needed. So Sheriff Barry, myself, and the sergeant from the post were actually the ones who interacted with most of the families last night.
Yes.
Can you tell us the nature of the trip? Were the students traveling on any UGA business or anything like that?
I do not know the nature of the trip at this point. I'll defer again to either Vice President or the police chief.
We really don't know at this point what was the nature of where they were at this point, so it will be speculation. So really be best not to say.
It's obviously a time when you're getting ready for finals. What extra things beyond just grief counseling can you do to make sure that the students are able to handle this tragedy?
I will tell you that those are conversations that we have been having today and will continue to have today as we contemplate how we help not only our students but the faculty and staff that worked with these outstanding students during the grief process. If the Vice President wants to add anything to that, I'd be glad to. But I think that's something that we are certainly discussing at this time.
In the follow-up, is there any consideration to some of these students being able to have their finals either delayed or put off?
You know, we're not really at a point to engage in that kind of conversation today. Our focus right now is on the students that have been killed or injured and their families, and we will work through this process as the day moves along.
Candlelight Vigil being held next week for all UGA students that have died this school year. What other students have passed away?
I don't have a listing in front of me, but we lose every year many individuals as a part of a university community that is nearly 50,000 when you think of our students, our faculty, our staff, and so some of those losses occur earlier in the year, some late in the year, but I've been at this institution for nearly 31 years, and I do not ever recall an event of this tragedy or magnitude. So we are just responding as we think appropriate.
As you've had the opportunity to walk around campus and exchange with others, do you already feel that weight of what's happened kind of just in the air, in the environment?
I think everybody feels that weight this morning. Anytime you lose a young person that has their entire life ahead of them, it's a horrible tragedy. And in this case, that's obviously magnified by the circumstances of last night. Yes, sir.
You mentioned resources that will be available to students. But what about faculty and staff and police officers and even people in the administration building here? What sort of resources are open to you guys as you work through this?
Well, I believe it's the same resources, but I'm going to defer to the Vice President for Student Affairs in terms of our CAPS unit and their availability.
We have, do I need to use a microphone? Sorry. Not that one, the black one. Just this one, okay. We have, within the health center, we have a counseling and psychological services area that's there for our students, and if there are staff members that need assistance there, they can also go and get services. We also have many folks in the community who are willing to help out the UGA community. We have the Campus Ministry Association, which has always been very helpful in terms of meeting at times like this and helping folks get through such a tragedy. And we always refer folks that if you ever have any needs to please contact the Dean of Students office, and we can get any staff member or any student to the right place in terms of any counseling or any services that they may need.
And I would just emphasize that the people I've communicated with this morning, I have advise them to contact the President's office directly if they need assistance, and we will find that assistance for them. Anyone else?
Explain how, I mean, this is devastating, and how do you guys move beyond this, and how difficult is this for the entire UGA community?
Well, I think you take things one day at a time, and you do what you can do today to support our university community, and you get up tomorrow morning and you do the same thing all over again. I can't predict how long something of this nature takes to completely process. I just know that all of us in the university community today are devastated, and we are particularly grieving for the families and the close friends of these students. But I don't think today's an appropriate time for me to speculate on the length of time that each of us has in going through a grieving process. This is something that the university hasn't faced before, and we will face it, and we will provide support to each other. Yes, sir.
Could you give us an idea of what you told the families when you spoke with them?
I told them what you would expect me to tell them, that I cannot imagine how any of them are facing this kind of tragedy and loss, and that our university stands ready to assist them in any way, to support them in any way, and that we want them to know that they're not alone, and that we have many people at this institution that will support them and provide any assistance that's possible. Obviously, none of us can imagine what the families are going through at this point. That was apparent to me this morning at Athens Regional Hospital. And so we just have to do what we can do to offer our support, and that's what we will try to do.
Are you able to share any details on the condition of the student there?
Well, again, I don't think that's appropriate for me to do. I think that's the family's role to say what they will say when they say it.
Did you sleep last night?
Not really, no.
Were all of the young ladies members of Young Life? I know you didn't want to be specific on the other organization.
You know, I'm just not going to, I think they have to, the family should announce what organizations they were a part of. I just don't want to be the person that goes into the personal nature of each student at this point, this morning, just a few hours after the tragedy. But I can confirm that these students were very active students in the university community, and they have many friends, many supporters, many people that have been impacted by this event.